values. You need to align on some basic core values if you're going to have a good marriage. Opposites seem to attract, but if you don't align probably on these three things, you're going to have a lot of trouble in your marriage. God is going to want to lead you towards someone who's got those values if you let him. That may not be the first person you'd have thought of if you're just picking people out of a lineup at first, until you begin to let him shape you. And then it will be. By the time he introduced me to Claire, I instantly took an interest in her. I don't know that I would have 5 years before that, because I don't think I was...
Pretty certain I wouldn't have been interested in him 5 years before.
Well, no, that's exactly right. But when he had formed that in us, we saw those things in each other.
Because there are a lot of ways in which we are opposites, and we think, just about our story about painting the house, we approach things very differently, and I'm introverted and he's extroverted, and he loves attention and I hate attention, and a lot of ways in which we don't look on paper like we're compatible, but we do have a shared value of commitment, of our faith, and most of the time in parenting. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, most of the time. But we do agree that we wanted to be parents. We thought kids were a blessing. Nobody's wanting to ignore the kids.
We wanted to raise our children with faith and an understanding of commitment.
But that's not always the case.
Yes.
Sometimes you'll marry someone just because you think, man, that person looks great. And it turns out they didn't even want kids. We had friends who divorced after 15 years because they never could agree on that. Because one of them wanted kids and the other one just said, I just don't want kids. And finally, the first one said, look, I got to go find someone who wants kids. So she divorced him because he wouldn't budge on that. Of course,
not advocating
their
resolution, but
I can understand her perspective on that. And what commitment means. What does fidelity mean? Does it mean once we're married, it's just us and only us forever? Or does it mean it's only us unless you're busy on a Saturday night? There are people who think that, and you really got to know before you get married to them, because you're going to have a lot of sparks in your relationship, but not good ones. Could you imagine if you disagreed on something basic like that, how much stress there would be in a relationship?
Yeah. And commitment, is commitment forever, or is commitment as long as it's convenient?
Right.
Commitment until we're tired of it.
And what is marriage at all? Is it two people merging, or is it I'm adding you into my life as long as I feel like you're a benefit to my life, or until I get bored with you, or it just gets hard? That's not the same as someone else who says, I'm giving myself to you. It's important to know. If one feels that way, I'm all in, and one is like, as long as you're good for me, that person's always going to have more power than the other person. If this, well, I'm out of here as soon as you don't meet all of my needs. That's a very stressful relationship. I've known people who've been in that situation. It's just terrible.
Yeah.
Plus, so you're going to have a lot of conflict, right? And how are you going to resolve it? Have you ever heard of a level up tool before? You can use this at work and at home. You ever been in an argument before with somebody that gets pretty heated? Anybody?
All the time.
Yeah, sure. Well, sometimes it's really hard to figure out how to solve it if you really have different feelings about what's going on. But one thing you can do is, if you have already pre-agreed to more foundational things, you can say, okay, we're disagreeing with how to handle this right now. Can we level up to something we both agree on, and then figure out how can we decide this in a way that best fits with that? You can do that. Some things you can level up to are your values. This is what we said commitment is. If we're having some disagreement, maybe, I don't know, maybe Claire's not happy with something I'm wearing.
When we first got married, some of his fashion choices were not.
Well, that's different. That's just because I couldn't color coordinate. Oh, now that did happen. I walked out of the closet the first day after we'd married, going somewhere. I'd put on some dress clothes, and Claire, something, it seemed like right away. And Claire said, oh no, you're not going to wear that shirt with those pants, are you? And I thought, what have I been doing for 25 years up to now? Until someone told me that this doesn't match. But different kind of, what are you wearing? More like, I wish you wouldn't wear that outside the house. You can have conflict over that. But maybe there's something you can agree on. Well, we agreed on total commitment. Well, this makes me feel very insecure about our commitment. Okay. For that, then, I will wear something different. Does that make sense? It can help you. It's not easy, but it gives you somewhere to go. Yeah. But if you disagree on your core values, you have nowhere to go in your conflict. That's the challenge. Which is why we're going to talk next time about the importance of actual marriage vows.
Yes.
We've actually promised something to each other, because that's something you can level up to. Well, we said this when we got married. Last thing for tonight, God's building you in ways you don't know. I wouldn't have been able to tell you any of that about relational needs or values or any of that stuff. All I knew was God's taken me on a journey and teaching me things in His book while I was by myself, reading devotionals about just getting closer to God and learning what His values were. Which turns out those were her values, because that's what she was doing too. And so He lined us up. But I didn't know that that's what He was doing. And then this part, trust God to arrange the meeting. That's the hardest part. For me, in the 3 years, that was the hardest part. Now,
I think probably all of us sitting here today might say that would be the hardest part.
Yeah.
Trusting Him to arrange it, trusting that He will, that He may, that even if He doesn't, it's okay.
Yeah, that even if He doesn't. When I was 21, 22, 3 years was an eternity. Now it's not.
That was like a minute.
Our son was in 9th grade in high school, now he's in college. I can't believe it. But then it was an eternity. I mean, I thought I was going to die going through those 3 periods. I waited on Him and let Him arrange the meeting when He was ready. There's a stage He goes through. You don't just jump right in, probably, right to, that's the person to marry you. He's probably going to say, this would be a good person to be a friend with. And then at some point, He might nudge you and say, I think you should ask this person out on a date. And then maybe you should make it more serious. And then maybe you should get engaged. Maybe He will do that. He may say, oh, grab this person right now, right off the street. But probably not. This is the last step we're going to go to tonight. And we're going to share a little story about that, about how He did that for us. How are we doing?
We're good.
Oh, okay. I was in this process of molding myself. And one of the problems I was having is I had left all my fraternity friends. I was a co-founder of that fraternity at Kennesaw State University.
It was a business fraternity.
Yeah, but it was a co-ed.
But
we still were
did
nuts.
fraternity things.
Yeah, I was an officer and all. I mean, it was crazy hard for me to step away from that. But I had to, because I couldn't resist the temptation when I was there. So I did that. But I still was with my roommate, who had been a friend of mine forever, and he had all his friends coming through and everything. And it was extremely tempting. He was a heavy drinker, owned a still, in our house. It was really a tempting environment. So I thought, I got to go to a church. And that's all I was thinking. I got to go find a church. I ended up here after trying a lot of churches in town. But I was afraid to go to a church because I knew that I was trying to get right with the Lord. But I had no concept of, how will I say this right? There's no such thing as get right with the Lord first, and then you can have a relationship with Him. He wants a relationship with you right now, and He makes you right just simply by that relationship. In other words, if you say, Lord, be my Lord, He's like, okay, I'm your Lord, you're clean now. And now you can start growing, but I didn't know that.
He thought he needed to fix himself up first.
Yeah, I looked dirty still, and I was embarrassed. So I took as many of my friends with me as I could to go try some of these churches. Come on, try, just go with me. And I had 6 or 7 dudes.
Wore a suit and tie and all
yeah,
that.
and we would go around to these churches. What would happen is one would drop off about every time. We'd go to a different one for a couple weeks and one would drop off. They'd say, oh, this is not for me. Finally, we got to this one. And I had one friend left who was still willing to go. He dropped off after a couple weeks. But I said, I'm not leaving. I'm going to stay here and I'm going to figure this thing out. And then eventually I found a young people group in the church, college age.
Young professionals.
Yeah. I went and checked out that class, and I began to meet people in that class, and I met a lot of really nice people, including this one who was in that class. I didn't plan to meet her in that class. I wasn't looking for that. That's the point. I wasn't looking when we met each other. That's the start of what was going on with me then. Did you have anything during that time?
From my perspective, I had shared a little bit that I had gone to college, graduated, and moved back home. I was in graduate school and working and living with my parents again. And that's not where I wanted to be. I didn't share that part of the story before. I had a different plan. I wanted to go to University of Georgia, not Georgia State, and I wanted to have an apartment with my friend who was going there, and that was my plan. And God had a different plan for me, and it didn't work out for me to go to UGA. It worked out for me to stay here and live with mom and dad again. Yay.
Yeah.
That's what every young adult wants, right?
Yeah.
But I did get free room and board, and I did get a job, and there was a path that God led me down to get that job, so I was able to pay for school and things like that, and ended up back at Roswell Street. As I said, I didn't know a lot of people. There wasn't any group that I connected with at the time when I first came back. I went to the singles class, and they were old. I mean, it's funny because once I got married, we ended up being friends with a lot of them that got married at the same time. But from my perspective, they seemed really old and I didn't connect with them. So I started serving in some other places. And then I started praying about, how can I, meet some other people and, Christian young people my age and stuff. So someone at the church started this class for younger professionals. And so I have been attending that class and getting to know the people and growing my relationship with God and them. And then this guy shows up.
And she didn't think anything of it. You just
it's
thought
just
it was,
another person in the group, and hey, one more person to hang out with. It's all good.
Now I don't know.
I'm not dating. Remember, not dating. At
Right. She was not dating. I was not dating. But what happened is
dating.
we were talking. We started getting to know each other, and I started not being able to not think about her. I started to think about her all the time. And I don't know how long it was between the time I couldn't stop thinking about her and I asked her out. It felt like forever because it's been 3 years and now all of a sudden, it was like a month. So, but what happened is, now the old me would have asked her out right away as soon as I had the first thought. But I was not that person. I prayed about it. And I said, Lord, I cannot stop thinking about this person, but this is not why I came here. And I'm okay if you tell me, put her out of your mind. This is not why you're here. I really would like to ask her out, but I don't even know if I'd be good for her or not. I prayed about that, and I know this is going to sound weird when we say promptings. I always think it sounds weird too when pastors say stuff like this. God talked to me. But it was a feeling, is the best I can describe. The same feeling that happened when I got told to get up away from that game. I couldn't hear it, but I felt the words, you've got to get out of here. I heard Proverbs 31. I did not know what Proverbs 31 was. So that's how I know. I'd never read Proverbs 31 in my life. I had to look up where is even Proverbs to get to Proverbs 31. So I got there, and it gave this description of this woman with incredible character, who was honest and upright, did right by everybody, and was truthful and all. He said, that is the person you were talking to. And I thought, well, okay, you're going to tell me to leave her alone. He said, and it's okay, ask her out. And that's what happened. So I did. I asked her out, and she turned me down. And she turned me down flat. She said she had something else to do. I went back to God later, and I said, I'm not sure I heard this right. Now, I have to tell you, I had never been turned down before for a date. I'm not saying that I was always very careful about who I asked out, but I'd never had anybody just turn me down. And I was like, what do I do with this?
Busy.
She was busy. That's good. She's got confidence. And she wasn't where I was yet. So she turned me down. She's busy. She had other things going on. But I went back to God and said, I don't know if I heard that right. And I didn't like that feeling. And he said, ask her out again. So I did. The next week I asked her out again. And she turned me down again. And she doesn't remember this. Then I went back and said, I hate this.
Clear.
This is really terrible. My ego is really getting hurt here. I'm not used to this. I can tell you I would never have thought to ask someone out again after the first time. But now I'd asked her out twice. And he said, do it again. And I asked her out again. And then she agreed to go out with me. It turns out later, you had something you were hoping for from somebody at that time, right?
Yeah, I had never really been in a serious relationship, and I'd gone out with different guys here and there. And I think what God was showing me and revealing to me is that I wanted someone that would pursue me, and to pursue me because I was someone worth pursuing, someone worth having. Because I don't know that I necessarily felt. I definitely didn't feel like any Proverbs 31 woman. That still makes me. It's such a high bar to live up to that I never felt like I would have accomplished or achieved that.
And I haven't asked her to,
Ever will.
by the way. Yeah. So.
Good thing. So just someone that would see things in me that I didn't see in myself.
She needed someone to pursue her, she told me. That's what it was. So I kept pursuing her. And God needed me to be willing to do that and to let my ego go and pursue her like that. And I did. And I pursued her. I was scared the second and third time because I didn't like being told no in a row like that. It wasn't any fun. So she did go out with me. And by the way, one thing that I was excited about is if anybody I had dated prior to Claire would have ever seen this, I would say they were all wonderful people. Beautiful people, great personalities. We just weren't right for each other. We just were not good for each other. When I met Claire, and I really couldn't stop thinking about her, and I wanted to ask her out, she was a beautiful person. My prevailing thought is, she makes me want to be more like Jesus when I'm with her. I'm already on this path. I'm growing to be more like you want me to be, and she makes me want to be that way when I see her. That was a different feeling. That was the first thing. That's what I kept thinking about. So she finally went out with me. We went on our first date, and we'll end on this. What happened here? Here's the promises on this. Trust the Lord. Don't try to figure this out on your own. Just follow him, and he can lead you to where he wants you to go. And that's what happened. He led us together, and we did not know each other. We didn't have a plan for each other. We were just trying to, in our own way, stop doing it our own way. Give ourselves to him. And I had settled that in that period of 3 years, for the first 6 months, it was brutal. After the first year, I didn't like it, but I had started to say, it's okay if I don't get married. But I'm not going to date around. I'm not going to sleep around. And it's okay if I don't get married. And I think he needed me to be that way before I'd be okay in a marriage. You know, be secure in who you are. So I took her out on our first date finally. I was all excited. I guess the story here is it's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect, because if God's ahead of it, it's all going to be okay. Because I messed up our first date. I took her to the fair. My only goal was to get a second date. Be on my best behavior. The hardest part to me was keeping my mouth clean, because I had gotten so used to just using some words casually. I'd been guarding those much more in the last several years, but I didn't want to let anything come out because I didn't want her to be disappointed and not want to go out with me.
And at this
again.
point, I just thought he was a good church boy.
An edgy one, but a good one, and that's
Not
what
too
she
edgy,
needed.
yeah.
But not too edgy, not like cursing like a sailor or anything. What happened is we got on a carousel. That was the first ride we got onto, but it wasn't the smart one that it would have been to have me get on with the open carriage, and it's nice and slow. You get
the
these
Ferris
little,
wheel.
yeah, the Ferris wheel, yeah, the carousel's a round thing, the Ferris wheel. But it wasn't the big one that's slow. You get in these little cages. We got in the cage like that thing, and then this operator guy spins it really quick, and we're going head over heels like 100 times before we start. And I blurt out, I don't know what, but it was not good words that I blurted out right away. First thing, we start going, and that's all I'm thinking about for that entire ride is our date is over. We're going to get off, and she's leaving. We got off of that thing, and apparently she never heard it.
I was probably freaking out myself because we're spinning around like this, and
Yeah.
I'm trying not to toss my cookies or something all over my date.
Mm-hmm.
So I had no idea he said anything.
No, so I did okay with that, but then immediately blew it on the second ride, and she did, I don't even remember this, but she remembered this. What happened?
Yeah, so we're on some other ride in which we're flipping upside down, and we're dangling upside down in this one, and I guess my hair's like all standing on end, and I'm upside down, and he looks over and he said, "You look like Marge Simpson." And I don't know if y'all know the Simpsons, but Marge Simpson, she's got this blue hair that sticks up. I'm like, Marge Simpson? I mean, she's not your ideal beauty in any sense of the term. I'm like, what in the world
not a
is he doing?
compliment.
Calling me Marge Simpson? What?
Yeah.
So I wasn't real happy about that comparison.
I just meant the hair, but anyway. We got through that, and she went out with me again. What we'll do is we're going to stop there, and we're going to go into engagement, how God did that, what happened there, and that's very short. And then just some challenges we had right in the beginning of our marriage. And the reason we're going to talk about that is because I'm going to go back and show why he led us through those stages he led us through. Why those are the stages and what they do for you, so that when you get to those hard parts of marriage, he's prepared you for it and you can work through it. We're going to be pretty real about some hard times we had in the beginning of our marriage. That's kind of the plan for next time. Show that God's choice grows you. Once we started dating, there were more ways that he started preparing me to be married to her that I wasn't prepared for.
Does the baseball have something to do with that?
It does. It has to do with...
Is that you playing softball?
No,
Oh.
it has to do with me learning how to talk to your parents. Because my family didn't talk. And their family talked, and they got along with their relatives and everything. And I learned a really hard lesson that if I'm going to be in this family, we're going to talk. We're not going to have a TV on all the time. And I didn't know how to do that. I'll share what happens. My parents didn't talk to each other. They yelled at each other. They didn't talk to each other. And we didn't ever have dinner at the table. We had dinner in front of TVs, usually in different rooms. After our first couple dates, her parents started inviting me over to have dinners with. And I didn't know what to talk about.
Yeah, we sat at the table,
Yeah,
no
yeah.
TV on.
It was
off.
so stressful. I was sweating the whole time. I didn't know what to do. He was preparing me.
I had no idea. It was just my normal life.
What we'll do is talk about what happened through that, and then how he confirmed that we should get married, not just through us. And that was powerful, because that's what he does, is he will confirm through other people in ways that you couldn't have imagined that this is what he wants you to do. And then we'll go to the marriage, talk about some principles for relationships, and then we'll just have an open Q&A and let you guys ask us anything.
Have a question time right now.
I think we could. Can we
we've got
go
a
back
few
to just the picture of the stages?
I was just gonna have us, if we're gonna talk, just
Well, let's just do that.
yeah.
So, do I have a picture of that in front of me?
This.
Oh yeah, I'm looking at it right there. What we have here is the stages that God seemed to lead us through, and some of the verses that he led one or both of us into when we were in those stages, without us knowing that that's what he was doing. This is a good thing for you to look at, and maybe look these things up and think this over and think, where am I right now? You may not be at, she didn't even have level 0 in
You
here.
didn't put that on the sheet.
Oh, okay. I guess we figure you're not at level 0. That's good. You're better off than I was. So where am I at, and what are some things that God would want me to think about relative to where I'm at? That's what we'd like you to do between now and next week, and let's talk about that when we come back together. But let me stop and see, are there any questions anybody has about anything we said? The key message is we're presenting it as steps, but I don't want you to get too worried about thinking of it as a process. It was stages of learning to really give ourselves to God. I do this same step at work. I let him lead me where I was in my career. I'm really trying to do the same thing in ministry too. Sometimes I get in arguments with him over that, but this is the way he does things. That's our real life.
All our choices, decisions that we make, these are good principles to walk yourself through.
Anything you want to ask us or share with us about things you've experienced related to this or some other aspect.
Just open for whatever, anything you might want to talk about next week. We can make a note of that to include.
Is this what you thought it would be even, or is it totally different? Yeah, anything you want to share?
Yeah.
This isn't what I thought it would be, but it's actually really good, and it's confirmation about where I've been going with God, trying to figure out, how to navigate this dating world.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate all the principles that you're talking about, and it's helping me to better understand where I'm at, so I can move forward.
Well, I'm really, really glad, Chantel.
Good.
We prayed a lot about this before we did it, and we prayed 2 things. So if you're in here, you are an answer to these prayers, and that is one, that this is true. That's what we're praying about, and God brought a lot of confirmation to us that this isn't just our journey, this is a lot of people's journey. And then I found, like I said earlier, I found professional Christian writers who do this for a living and have written books, and it turned out it's these stages, and we're going to share that with you next week. So we know it's true. The second thing is, we prayed that whoever would come here would be in this vision for God, because we don't want to mess with people's lives. We're not doing this to sell a book or anything, so we're doing it because we want to share and give people hope. So if you're here, we believe that you're on this path somewhere, and that he has a design for you. So yeah, excellent.
Yeah. Anybody else?
What do you think? Is this what you expected? Is it different? Is it okay?
This is what I was hoping for. So.
Oh, good.
Good. It's not what I would have expected.
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm enjoying it.
Good.
Good. I'm glad. Well, we really hope you come back. We are enjoying this chance to be with you. Take the week, pray over it, think about these things, and we'd love to have any promptings that God has put onto you between now and then as we go forward. But that's the first night, so I hope that was good
and
to you.
Feel free to email us, message us if you have any questions, have any thoughts about anything during the week. Again, if there's anything that you want us to talk about the next time. I know that one thing that people who are dating talk about it, well, how do I meet people who are like-minded?
Yes.
And that is a great question. I'm not going to say that we have the answer, But we can definitely brainstorm about it and give you guys some thoughts about that we've had about possibilities of that, if that's something of interest to you.
Yep.
And maybe you guys have some ideas for each other.
Yeah,
as
absolutely.
well in that. So
Yeah. Because it can be tough. It can be tough.
Yeah.
It was tough when we were dating too, and
it's completely different now and
Yeah.
no easier.
That's right. Well, let me pray to
Yeah.
close us out. Dear Lord, thank you for this time, and thank you for this opportunity to glorify you, really, because that's what we're doing. We're saying that you're above all this, and you have a plan, that you care for each of us, and you care for the people you're leading us toward, too. We're grateful for this opportunity to be in a journey toward that person and to grow, and we give it to you and we submit to you. We believe what you said when you, as Lord Jesus said, if you want to save your life, give it to me. And that's what we chose to do, and that's what we all choose to do. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
See you next time.